Another video here. Yesterday I watched The Abyss, which is a James Cameron film from 1989. Um, Being honest about this one, I think the only reason anyone cares about it is that James Cameron made it. It's fine. Um, it's sort of like a cheese sandwich of a film, like a processed cheese sandwich of a film. It's okay if you want something, but it's no more than okay for me. Spoilers follow, but first of all, about Cameron himself, I do think he's a directing genius, and I can't fault his commercial sense. He always makes money, but I sort of divide his films into three groups. I'm ignoring Piranha 2 because he didn't really make that. So I think of his work as three groups. There's the early franchise work, which would be the Terminator films and Aliens, and then there's the standalones that aren't part of a series. So you've got The Abyss, True Lies, and Titanic. Apparently there's a Titanic 2, but I don't know if that's anything to do with Titanic, so ignore that probably. That one, Titanic 2, has 1.7 on IMDb, and there's no one recurring from the first one. There's different director, different actors. Maybe the iceberg comes back, I don't know. But anyway, there's early franchise stuff by Cameron, then there's the standalones, and then there's this current Avatar obsession period. So what I wish had happened was that he did this early franchise stuff, and then the standalone stuff that's roughly in the middle of his career, and then Avatar had been another one and done as well, and he'd continued doing more one and dones. I think Avatar could have been a cool one off. Then I wish he'd done more sci-fi action with new IPs. I hate the term intellectual property, but new IPs. I know Avatar was a new IP, but I don't want five of those. I don't want five of those. So it would be cool if he dream up some new stuff the way he dreamed up Terminator or even The Abyss, but it looks like we're getting 4 or 5 Avatars instead. I don't really want any more Blue People films, but they're coming. I'll probably end up watching them because I'm a glutton for punishment. But anyway, back to The Abyss. What's it about, and do I like it? Well, I'll go through the plot step by step and say how effective that was. So there's an American submarine, and it has an encounter with some sort of alien submerged object, and it sinks. So they're fucked. Russian ships are coming in to salvage this sub, and there's also a hurricane coming in. So the government sends a SEAL team to the underwater drilling platform, which is called Deep Core, to look for survivors. And this team is Ed Harris. Ed Harris' character is called Brigman, Virgil Brigman, I believe, and his wife, she's called Lindsay. She's played by Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and she gets drafted in not as part of Ed Harris's normal team, but she's the designer of the drilling platform, which is very convenient for the plot. So it puts those two together. We're sort of meant to see Lindsay as this headstrong bitch, but they drop all that after a couple of scenes. And there's also Michael Bain playing this guy called Coffee, who's creepy and he goes nuts later. So Brigman and his wife, this is the crux, the main part, the emotional core of the film is that Brigman and his wife are in the process of divorcing. So it's obvious, really, that later on they'll be getting back together again, and that's where the emotional payoff is going to come. And then there's some one-note semi-characters after that. There's a black lady called One Night, which is a bit of a stupid name for a character, if you ask me. And then there's a guy who has a rat with him all the time. And this guy risks his life for this rat in at least one scene. Like, why did he take a rat with him instead of leaving it on the surface support ship? Why did Ed Harris' character let him complicate their operation by bringing an animal down with him? Basically, the answer is that the rat is there so they can use it to demonstrate some liquid oxygen stuff that divers can breathe. Your suit fills up with it, you take it in your lungs, and I guess it makes you dive better. So anyway, they go down to look for survivors in the sub, and they hit all these issues. So one of their team, Coffee, Michael Biehn from Terminator and Alien, gets orders to go and retrieve a Trident missile warhead from the submarine. But the storm comes from above, and the crew can't disconnect from the surface ship, and a crane falls on them down on the drilling rig. So the rig gets dragged to the edge of this underwater abyss. This part's quite exciting. I enjoyed this part. There's some tension there. You wonder if they're going to get dragged down into the ocean. It's not really. It's not on the level of watching Terminator 2 or any of Cameron's better films, but it's sort of interesting. The setting makes it very interesting because they're down in the water. Get to this later, but Cameron shot in these giant water tanks that were specially built, so it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. It's tense. You wonder what's going to happen. So far so good. So anyway, the alien life that caused the sub at the beginning of the film to sink starts to investigate the rig, sending a column of water in, like a probe. That's all an interesting idea. I don't know how it works. They say that the alien or the entity can maybe control water on a molecular level, but like most of the science that's mentioned in this film, it doesn't get expanded upon, so you just kind of forget about that. The effects are obviously shit. It was the 80s, so it's not their fault. When stuff like this came out, it was probably like, cavemen seeing fireworks for the first time to see any CGI at all. But now it looks shaky, but the 80s films walked, so the current films could run, I suppose, so no points deducted for that. So this coffee guy, he goes a bit mad, I think, because they're down in the ocean, and he decides that he's going to take the warhead and he's going to nuke whatever entity is down in the water. So he ties the warhead onto a mini sub, and to stop him from doing that, the leader of the SEAL team, Brigman, Ed Harris, fights him. And then there's a boring chase scene here where Ed Harris and his wife character are in another sub going after coffee, and it's not exciting like watching Terminator 2 or anything. It's just sort of bland. I sort of cared barely who would win, barely, but coffee dies, but he manages to launch the warhead down into the trench. So the result of this chase scene is that Ed Harris and his wife are now stuck in a damaged sub, and they only have one suit, and it's a long swim back. So they're in this flooding submarine. The air is running out in there. They've got Ed Harris is wearing a suit. His wife doesn't have a suit, and she's cold, and this scene's really uncomfortable. This is one of the best scenes of the film, because it's claustrophobic. It's horrible. You don't know how they're going to get out. It's about 7 or 8 minutes swim back to safety, and so Lindsay Brigman, Ed Harris' wife, that character, she actually volunteers to drown, and the idea being that her body is super cold and she'll be dead, but she'll be sort of preserved. So Ed Harris can drag her back, and they can do CPR on her later. That scene's horrible to watch. It's well conceived. It's well done. I felt really uncomfortable watching that. But anyway, she does actually drown, and Brigman, Ed Harris, drags her back. And then there's a long and melodramatic scene where they're trying to revive her, and the rest of the team are like, buddy, she's fucked. She can't. They don't say that, but they say, give up, and he won't give up, and he keeps going, and the scene goes on probably too long, and eventually they manage to revive her. She comes back, and then so they're left with the problem now. They've got a warhead down in the trench, and Brigman says he'll go and get it. So that's all pretty good. It's pretty good. It's sort of a bit predictable that she'll come back to life, but it's well executed. It's good. Brigman volunteers to be the one to go and retrieve this warhead from down in the trench, and he volunteers to go down in the suit filled with the oxygenated breathing diving liquid, and he goes down really, really uncomfortably deep, and he starts to go mad for a while, and he's communicating with them up above by typing, But anyway, he gets to the warhead and he manages to disable it, and he doesn't have enough liquid oxygen stuff to get back. So he just types, I'm going to stay here and just die, basically. And his wife, Lindsay, cries and he's ready to give up. But the aliens come from the depths and take him on their ship, and he's okay at the end. So um, this is where I have a problem with this film. I don't get what's supposed to be exciting about that conclusion, about that end. The aliens that are deep down in this trench in the film, they're not a threat in the film. They're just nice, basically. And then they save the main character, which isn't tense or exciting. The only bad guy, the only antagonist that's exciting at all is Michael Biehn's character, Coffee, and he dies ages before this. So I think this is supposed to be maybe a love story, showing how Ed Harris and his wife hate each other and they get back together. Maybe the wonders and the dangers of the ocean make them realize how precious they are to each other. But you know, the film's making you focus on the ocean, so you're thinking, I'm going to get cool ocean stuff. I'm going to get maybe some sort of threat, some kind of dangerous monsters, something like that that's going to be exciting, like in other James Cameron films, and that, you know, it was probably done a bit better in Avatar later, but not really. You barely see the aliens. It's not their fault, but the aliens look a bit cheesy. So anyway, that's it really. There isn't. I know. What do I think of this? Really, I mean, it's fine. The writing is functional. Lines of dialogue are okay. It's a bit cheesy. The effects are okay for the time. The action sequences are pretty limp for Cameron, but they do the job. It's not the same director that did Alien, really. It's literally him, obviously, but it's not the same skills they brought to Aliens. I feel like what happened here was that James Cameron wanted to do a water-based film, play around with submarines, mini-subs, communicate his love of the ocean. I don't think he was trying to make a crowd pleaser here. I think he was trying to make something deep and philosophical. I don't know what the message of this film is. There are aliens in the deep. They don't tell you how the aliens are there, by the way. They're just sort of there, which is a bit unsatisfying. But they're aliens in the deep and they don't hurt you, and then they save the main character at the end. It was not exciting. Maybe the aliens are a stand-in for Mother Nature. So if we're nice, they'll save us. But if we're in a nuclear sub, they'll cause us to sink. So maybe it's a morality tale. I don't really know. It's quite long. The short version is 140 minutes. So I think that, you know, maybe I read somewhere in the longer version, in the special edition, there's a subplot about nuclear weapons that maybe that was the message. But I don't think I can go back and watch a 170-minute version of this. The experience of this really is just one minor disaster, one sort of low-key set piece happening after another, with a couple of superb tense scenes, but generally you just don't really care because there's no well-defined antagonist, and then it just sort of ends. Aliens rescue Ed Harris, the end. So the way, just to sort of spoil, I guess, my rating, I would give this 6.5 out of 10. It's solid. It's definitely worth watching, especially if you want to watch all the James Cameron films. I just wouldn't go back and rewatch it. I think the way it was made is more interesting. So James Cameron trained the entire cast and crew to dive, and they had to shoot in these enormous specially made tanks that leaked. So they had to patch those up as they went. They had to put a layer of plastic beads on top to keep it clear enough to shoot. There's whole articles on the shooting of this film. James Cameron himself almost drowned, so he actually went right in there with the rest of them. He almost drowned. He got stuck down in the water filming, and his oxygen was running out. And when he got near the surface, one of the crew put a regulator in his mouth so that he could get some air. But the regulator, they didn't know it had been flooded with water, so when Cameron took a breath, it was a breath of water. And apparently the guy was holding Cameron down to stop him getting an embolism and to stop his lungs from over expanding on the way up. but he didn't know that Cameron was breathing water, so Cameron had to punch him in the face to stop this guy from holding him down so that he could swim up. So James Cameron nearly died making this. Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio were completely pissed off by the shooting of this. She was cold and wet and topless and getting slapped and pounded on the chest for one scene. That sounds pretty horrible. I think that's more interesting than the final product, really. There's some good atmosphere that they're in the sea, and the score's good and everything, but all in all, it's just not that much of a brilliant atmospheric film like Aliens or something. It doesn't sustain atmosphere, suspense, tension. You get a certain amount of atmosphere just from being underwater, but that's it. And it feels like Cameron was trying to make a deeper, more intellectual film, but that he didn't really have something well defined to say, or at least it didn't come across in the finished product. Like I said, apparently the longer edition has more themes in it, but anyway, I don't think I'll watch that soon. I might watch it one day, but not soon. What rescues this film from being borderline bad or just average is the performances, I think. Michael Biehn is good with a I think his name's Michael Biehn. Mispronounced names. Is good with a moustache. He looks creepy. He looks like a good villain. He's very convincing. Ed Harris is reliably convincing. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio is good. The water scenes look good. The submarines and the mini subs look good. Obviously, the production values are very high. They didn't cut corners with this. It's just not that much of an interesting or an exciting film. And I wouldn't rewatch it, I don't think, anytime soon, at least. I think this could have been a great 100-minute long film with some antagonists in it. Maybe if the aliens have been bad, or if there'd been more and better human antagonists, some more villains in this, some more convincing peril that appeared more often throughout the film. It could have been a tight 100-minute underwater thriller, but it's a sort of bloated film with a muddled message that doesn't really manage to match up to the rest of James Cameron's films, I don't think. I think Avatar is better than this. The first Avatar. I've seen both Avatars. They're fine. The second one's fine. I preferred the first Avatar, and I think that is a better film than this. Not that there's that much similarity really between them. I mean, the first Avatar isn't a water film, so I don't know why I'm comparing it. I should compare the second Avatar to this. So I prefer the second Avatar to The Abyss. I think it's just visually more stunning, and although it's very heavy-handed, I think that it's clearer in what it wants to say. So anyway, that's my review of The Abyss. I give it 6.5 out of 10. If you like this review, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you soon.